Okay. Well, greetings. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kevin Pruyn, Bouley, instructional designer with the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. Glad to have you with us this afternoon on a Friday, a wonderful autumn Friday. So we're here for the Universal Design for Learning, Multiple Means of Engagement. And before we jump into things, just a couple housekeeping stuff. We are recording this session so that we can publish on our website for playback. Second, there's a QR code on the screen. If you have a mobile phone with the capabilities, you can sign in there so you'll get PDO credits. Otherwise, I will put a direct link in the chat now. Fill that out. It's just a quick thing. So you'll get credit for today's workshop that will appear in the Virginia Learning Center. Thirdly, a question throughout today's workshop. I'm very informal. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself, ask away, interrupt. If I go too fast or you need me to re-clarify something, by all means. If you're not comfortable unmuting your mic or you don't have a mic to be able to engage, use the chat. I will keep eyes on that as well, and we'll make sure to address any questions that come up along the way. But otherwise, very open for any questions throughout. If not, we'll leave some time at the end as well. Speaking of the end, the last 5 minutes I will reserve for today's workshop survey. It doesn't take longer than a minute, but that survey helps myself as an instructor, as a workshop guide, as well as CETL, our department, to help fine-tune these workshops to meet your needs for everything teaching and learning. So we appreciate your feedback. That is anonymous. I'll send out that link at the end of today's workshop. So if I think I've covered every housekeeping item, we will go ahead and jump right in. So learning outcomes for today's workshop, we will define the 3 principles of the universal design. Wow, let me start that again. Learning outcomes, we will define the 3 principles for the universal design for learning, summarize the UDL principle of engagement. That'll be our focus for today. And then apply some UDL strategies to help redesign an assignment that enhances student engagement. So I'm going to give you a workshop activity alert. This is in the last probably 15, 20 minutes. We're going to try to make over a assignment that you have in a current course or past course that is sort of run-of-the-mill, rudimentary. It's kind of one of those assignments that, you know, might still meet your course learning objectives or course learning outcomes, but needs a little oomph, needs a little more engagement, needs a little bit more pizzazz, if you will. And we'll talk through strategies today, and then have an opportunity to kind of workshop through remaking an assignment. Now, if you can't think of an assignment that you currently have in a course between now and the beginning of our activity, no problem. I've got a bunch of sample assignments that you can work through together. So if your creative power, your creativity on a Friday morning is lacking, I got you covered with some of the sample assignments that we can work through together. Any questions about that activity or where we're going before we jump into it?
Nope, I think we're good.
Awesome. Now, before we jump into the UDL framework, just curious, are you familiar with the UDL framework? Is it something you've heard about? Is it something you implement in any of your own courses? Where's your kind of current stance on that grasp, that understanding?
I have taken some classes in it as part of my master's programs.
Oh, fantastic.
But I really haven't been able to implement it in a classroom setting yet, other than just as an instructor for some of the police stuff.
Awesome. So theory, you kind of have an idea about that. That's great. We're going to do a little refresher, kind of contextualize UDL, and then, yeah, we're going to jump right into strategies and then how we can start implementing them for assessments, for some activities in online and other modal course type work. So let's go ahead and do that now. So broken down kind of the UDL framework, I like to start with its origins, and then we're going to end up with essentially what it is a framework. And so to provide some background context, UDL, Universal Design for Learning, found its origins in architecture and product design. in these worlds, they focused on sort of accessibility considerations, right? How to make buildings, how to make products more efficient, how to make them more accessible, of course, cost effective, and useful for the end user or for those that were using the product or would move into or make use of that building. The key point in sort of the origins of UDL, and particularly as we talk about curriculum and course design today in today's workshop, is how it benefits everyone, right? Let's take an example in architecture, an accessibility consideration for individuals who use wheelchairs, right? We can, and in architecture, there are wheelchair ramps, lowering counters, installing automatic doors, level handles, door handles instead of knobs, creating wider hallways and doors, right? All these considerations for individuals that are using wheelchairs that help them access the building, access, and really live in that environment. Now, all those considerations don't just benefit those with those needs, right? Take, for instance, a parent with a newborn child in a stroller trying to get into their apartment building. That automatic door or that wheelchair ramp benefits them. Think of someone coming back from the grocery store, their hands full. Again, automatic door is going to benefit them as well. So as you can see, these considerations aren't just helping to either level the playing field or meet those needs, but it meets the needs for everyone. And that is the crucial point, especially when we apply that to our course design and we think about our students as learners in our learning environment. So UDL framework came about from CAST, this organization, the Center for Applied Special Technology. They really kind of coined the term and borrowed these origins from architecture and applied it to education and curriculum. Now, there are a lot of different definitions, and I'm not going to bore you with all of them. There's a couple I do want to highlight. CAST has a couple that I like to always highlight, and that is the UDL framework, or the Universal Design for Learning, helps to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all people based on scientific insights into how humans learn. It's a great definition. It's kind of academic, hits those key buzzwords. They also go on to say UDL helps to guide the design of learning environments that are accessible, inclusive, equitable, and challenging for every learner. Again, good definition. I am drawn to Cornell University's definition, where they state that UDL helps to accommodate the needs and abilities of all learners and eliminates unnecessary hurdles in the learning process. Kind of more down to earth, but helps kind of capture UDL generally. I threw up here on the screen, accommodates the needs and abilities of all learners and eliminates unnecessary hurdles in the process. So I think Cornell did a good job there. So as we go down our tiered list here, UDL as a tool or tools in curriculum development and course design. Important thing to take away, it's not prescriptive, right? It's not a checklist that you go down and make sure everything's accounted for. It's not being dictated as a specific method or specific content to include. Rather, these are guidelines. It's a framework, that last tier there on the screen there, that helps guide our learners to not only guide them through the learning journey, but minimize barriers to maximize their learning. So all together, origins down to the framework. This is the Universal Design for Learning and how we're going to tackle it today. Speaking of the UDL framework, you already should know at least one of the principles. There are 3 in total, but do you have any ideas of the other 2, or can name the other 2 principles aside from engagement? And if you can't, that's okay.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries. We're going to dive into those briefly, do a little recap. So the first, or one of the principles is multiple means of representation. Second is the action and expression. And then third is engagement. And that's what we're going to focus in on today's workshop. I think CJ, I want to say he led a workshop on action expression, and Devrick, our other instructional designer has one on representation. I could have those flipped. Don't quote me on that, but this semester we each picked one and are delivering a focus on that. And I think we're going to repeat that for spring too. So multiple means of representation, the what of learning, right? When we think about representation, it's how students perceive and process content and how we can offer different ways of presenting that content or information to cater to the diverse needs, the preferences, and abilities of our students. We can do that through the various formats, right, in an online course, through text, audio, video, images, simulations, and all these help, again, to accommodate learners with different sensory or learning preferences. With the what or the representation, it helps to some strategies there to clarify information, breaking down, let's say, more complex content and helping to chunk that into manageable parts. And we can do that through charts, diagrams, smaller condensed videos, and we'll look at some of those strategies as well today. With representation, providing background knowledge, so offering options to access prior knowledge that learners might have with relevant context. So in this way, we are scaffolding knowledge and learning to help learners connect new concepts that they're unfamiliar with knowledge that they already know. And so we're building those building blocks, per se, of learning through that process. We can also provide options for language and symbols, from plain vocabulary, spoken language, with academic vocabulary that might be out of reach or new to our learners. Some strategies there are providing glossary of terms, especially for some of our STEM courses, but not exclusively to them. So learners can learn those and identify those new words and definitions throughout the course. I also have heard a lot of great use examples where instructors will have students create their own glossary of learning. So rather than dictate what words they need to know, as students go through a course, go through learning, words that they might not be familiar with, they write it down, kind of journal it, look up the definition themselves, and build their own glossary, per se. It's a great way to help build that learning from them, kind of giving them autonomy in that learning. And then finally, supporting what's known as cognitive processing, right? Having and using concept maps, outlines, guided notes. So if you've got a presentation in a course, you can do a fill in the blank kind of worksheet to keep learners engaged and filling in those notes as they follow along. All this is really to help them make sense of complex materials, right? And organizing it in ways that it's easier for them to not only process, but then retain for later demonstration. So that is representation, the what of learning. If we turn now to action and expression, this is going to be the how of learning. So giving learners various ways to demonstrate their knowledge, demonstrate their skills or understanding. So by this, we can, as instructors or course designers, give them the choice of medium. Are they going to do a written report or maybe an oral report, a presentation, a video, or a creative project that may be of use in a portfolio beyond the classroom, right? Giving them that choice of how they want to turn in an assignment or engage in an activity. Making the learning personal and making it relevant, as well as catering to their interests, right? Connecting again to learners and their own lives, their real world experiences. That's going to enhance engagement, keep them motivated because they can apply that learning and see those and make those connections to their own experiences. We can provide a variety of assessments and assessment methods. So projects, portfolios, as I've talked about, peer teaching. So not just typical instructor to student, but group work and having students teach each other, think, pair, share, and other activities that help students teach each other. All this to help students enable and showcase their understanding that resonate with their strengths and their interests, again, keeping them motivated. Self-regulation is also a key component of action and expression. So encouraging students to set their own goals, maybe aligning with course objectives or course outcomes. I've heard great examples where instructors at the beginning of a course have students write their own personal goals for that course that may align or may work in tandem with the course outcomes. And so students throughout the course can check in on those goals, how it's progressing, and they can see that learning in real time. Very powerful stuff. And finally, feedback mechanisms, right? Offering ways in which learners can receive feedback that's not just from their instructor, but from their peers, whether it's peer-reviewed or self-assessment. And this way, we help support a growth mindset for our students and help them take ownership of their learning. Because again, they're a lot of powerful in autonomy and ownership of their own, rather than just following a guided journey, if you will, through a course itself. All right, and then finally we come to engagement, which we'll unpack a little bit more with some key strategies as we work to our workshop activity in a little bit. But with engagement, we're talking about the why. We're creating these learning environments and strategies that help sustain student interest, encourage them to persevere through challenges, regardless of their knowledge, but making sure that those are available so students can grow through that. We can do that through a number of ways. There's recruiting interest, so giving students that choice in content and learning pathways, giving them choice in the tools they use to submit assignments or engage with each other, particularly in our hybrid and high flex course modalities. There's a lot of tools being utilized. Sometimes that can be overwhelming. So not only providing them choice, but being specific with those tools and how they interact with them, with that material. Important to set clear goals and challenging goals. This helps students understand kind of what they're working towards, right? Ultimately the course objectives or the course outcomes. But if we're allowing students to set their own goals, that's just as powerful. And that we, of course, provide challenging tasks where they can work through those, and stressing that creating a space where failure is okay. So you have low stake assessments, low stake activities where students can learn through those mistakes and then build upon their knowledge. Building collaboration, building community, very important in our online courses in particular, hybrid, high flex as well, where traditional face-to-face environment and experiences need to be replicated and aren't always a one-to-one replication, right? How do you capture, those few minutes before a class starts in the face-to-face environment where students are talking with each other, asking, getting feedback about projects or what topics they're going to choose? How do you replicate that in online or asynchronous environment, right? There are strategies, there are ways, but building community in an online course in particular is very key to motivation and persistence for our students. And we can do that through group work, peer feedback, and a number of other strategies that, again, we'll touch upon here in a bit. Feedback, as I mentioned, with action and expression, but also important for engagement, making sure that feedback is frequent and constructive, and it's not just good job on an assignment or well done, but we're identifying, what students' strengths are in their demonstration of knowledge, where they might be lacking, and providing that in real time and frequent so that they can use that to further their learning. And then finally, to encourage self-regulation. Self-regulation, particularly in online or asynchronous courses, is critical, right? Teaching students how to monitor their own progress, how to be responsible, because in particular, a asynchronous course, there's a lot of time management and being able to know in what assignments and what activities are coming so that students can prioritize and make those decisions themselves that ultimately they can help set their own goals and encourage them to stay motivated. So kind of a knowledge drop there, but hopefully kind of a recap, refresher for those that are familiar with the UDL framework and for those that this is kind of new. Hopefully that kind of laid that groundwork. Before we go on, just want to check in. Any questions, clarifications on any of these principles? Any comments or observations, overlaps between them?
No, I'm good. That was very clear. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So moving on, we're now going to talk about strategies to enhance particularly engagement. And we're going to run through a lot of these strategies that then are going to help us in our workshop activity here in a little bit. So we're going to run through these, and then I'm going to come back to these strategies, and I'll have a full list because during our sort of brainstorming time, we'll be pulling from this list of strategies when we remake or make over our assignment. And one of the asks I'll have in that kind of brainstorming and share is what strategies you chose when you remade your assignment. So three guidelines, and these are based on, if you're familiar with the UDL guidelines, they've got various versions over the years. The ones I'm focusing here are the 2.2 guidelines, which were sort of made public in 2018. UDL and CAS.org, that is, released the 3.0 guidelines literally the end of summer. I'm still culling through them. There's not a lot of big changes in the guidelines. Most of it is word and language choice, but there are some tweaks they've made and that I'm still kind of parsing through. So we're going to focus on the guidelines that have been around for the past 6 years. And then in the coming semesters, I might upgrade these to 3.0. But for now, we're going to stay in 2.0 or 2.2 land. So 3 specific guidelines we're going to name, and I've kind of already touched on them in our kind of recap of the principles themselves, but that is 1, recruiting interest, 2, sustaining effort and persistence, and then 3, self-regulation. So when we talk about implementing the principle of engagement, multiple means of engagement, and really what we're looking at is how we're addressing the many ways individuals and learners might vary in how they are motivated and stay engaged with learning content, right? Everyone's motivated, but differently. Everyone has different learning styles and different methods of staying engaged. From the instructor's perspective, or the instructor designer's perspective, or whoever's creating the course or delivering it, often the same person, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to put more work and effort or take additional time to implement these, whether they are course-wide or specific activity and assessment-wide. But it does require us to think a little more creatively of how we plan our lessons and assessments, right? If we go back to the world of architecture and the origins of UDL, it's important, again, all those accessible considerations are meant to be from the onset. So considering all those accessible ramps or doorways, any of those considerations from the onset is so critical, because if you don't catch them, or if you don't make efforts to implement them until after, that's going to be more cost effective. That's going to be more time consumed. But instead, in the world of architecture, like in course design and curriculum development, from the onset, it's going to be more cost effective, and it's going to prepare the learning path to be more proactive and allow that space for all those learners and all their needs, rather than react to a specific request or accommodation. So that's a key thing to keep in mind there. So not necessarily more work, but thinking more creatively. And that's kind of what our workshop activity today is going to help us begin to think about, is how we can think more creative in the assignments we design for our students. So with recruiting interest, there are several strategies, from starting with choice, offering choice in not only the content that students are interacting and reading and engaging with, but the tools that they're using to submit assignments, to engage with each other, with their peers, as well as use the instructor. Also the choice and the resources used. So using a diverse range of choice, but giving students the choice to select from those resources, right? So here in choice, we're looking at the topics, the media, and even the project types that they get to choose to submit. Autonomy, so also related to choice, but also letting students set their own goals and give them a sense of ownership and responsibility for their own learning is also very important. Being relevant and relevance in terms of relating examples, case studies, all that relate to the real world, right? It's easy to get caught up in designing courses and designing learning environments that stay, in the confines of a classroom. But what we want to do is relate it to the real world, relate it to what happens after the degree or the credential, and connect to students' lives as well, where they are currently. And so we can do this with a variety of ways. through the activities we provide, the sources of information that are not only culturally relevant, but socially, age-specific, demographic, and ability. So whatever course or whichever program you're teaching in, having the knowledge in mind of who your audience is. Some of our disciplines are going to have a wide range of audience, right? Our gateway courses where a lot of students come through through all the disciplines. But then there might be a course like anatomy and physiology, which is might be a narrow demographic of students. So keeping our audience in mind so we can design assignments and assessments that are relevant to their lives. Foster inclusive environments or a welcoming environment. So ensuring learning materials and activities reflect the diverse perspectives of our learners, that they're accessible to them. Again, using culturally responsible teaching materials. That can be anything from the choices of images or videos used to the language used throughout your course. And then finally, use of multimedia, right? We live in technology, a very technological advance and evolving one. A lot of different technology tools out there. It's important to know what tools are effective and not just using technology for technology's sake, but giving students also a choice of that technology. Are they, with their assignments, are they going to create a video or maybe a podcast? There's, graphic-based assignments or using gamification to create motivation and learning. So all these things ultimately catering to the different learning preferences and interests of our students. Second kind of overarching strategy, sustaining effort and persistence. So here, and some of these we've kind of already touched upon, but one of the things with learning, one of the things with students that we see that is widely documented is that their lack of motivation in any course, but particularly in our online and hybrid courses, is that a number of reasons. One is that they fully do not understand the goal or the purpose of maybe a course or the outcomes. Maybe they're not clearly defined, even down to the assignment and activity level. If they aren't sure of the purpose or how it applies to that course or overall kind of learning outcomes, then that motivation might be lacking. Another lack of motivation could be due to lack of community. So particularly in an online or hybrid course. So you as a student feeling isolated in an online course, if there's not a community that helps you keep accountable, that can lead to a lack of motivation. Also, a lack of course structure. Of course, if you've got a poorly designed course that takes a lot of time and energy, cognitive energy for a student to find assignments, to go back to the learning, that's going to get in the way of their learning. And again, might see a lack of motivation come out of that. So we can do that with a variety of strategies, having clear goals from those assignments and activities all the way up to the course level, providing spaces of collaboration. So group work, peer reviews and discussions, team-based projects are great examples to foster teamwork and create shared problem-solving opportunities that, again, create accountability within and for students. Creating challenging tasks and environment and varying that difficulty that helps to scaffold with step-by-step instructions for complex tasks that can gradually increase over the duration of a course, that students, as they develop their school skills, can build upon each other. Timely communication is also very important, of course. Maintaining regular and consistent communication, whether it's feedback on assignments or checking in weekly to see how students are doing within the course and outside of the course, right? We want to connect with students where they are. So allowing space where they can, talk about and express how life is going in general, because that's going to play a role and take a toll on their learning as well. Education and courses are not isolated from the environments and the lives our students are living. That might be obvious, but having that in mind when we're designing these activities is incredibly important. Moving on, a couple more strategies: assessment flexibility. So whether that's providing additional attempts or time on a specific quiz or assessment, all the way down to allowing them to demonstrate their understanding through different types of assessments, right? We don't want a course that just has multiple choice true false questions, right? That's not gonna take into account the different types of assessments that are out there and the different ways in which our learners who have different needs and strengths. So providing projects, essays, time for discussion, all these different assessments that give students the choice, but also that diverse range of ways to demonstrate their knowledge. Modeling, having model work or examples to show our students examples of high quality of work. This helps to clarify expectations so they know what they need to accomplish and what is sort of set as a benchmark. Rubrics do a great job of this sort of at the criteria level, but if you have projects, use projects from past semesters, show great examples that inspire students and give them a clear target to aim for. Peer learning and support. We've talked about this pretty extensively already, but creating opportunities for students to engage with each other, peer-to-peer feedback, collaborative learning experiences, group projects that, again, foster accountability and help them stay motivated through community. If they feel bound and connected with other peers, then if they slack or don't, contribute as much as they should, they're going to feel like they're letting their group down, and that's going to help motivate them to keep at that high level of expectancy. And then finally, setting clear expectations, very similar to clear goals, but using rubrics, communicating assessment requirements, very important to reiterate those things. We have a diverse range of learners that come through our courses, so keeping them focused and reducing those chances for ambiguity or unclear expectations will help guide them. All right, and then finally, self-regulation. We've mentioned this a little bit already, but the struggle with self-regulation and for our learners, for our students, can be due to a variety of reasons: environmental factors, lack of guidance, prior education, maybe bad past education experiences. So what we can do is provide a variety of different strategies, including self-assessment and reflection. We can encourage our students to evaluate their own progress, reflect on their own learning experiences. One great example of this that I've experienced myself, but also help facilitate for faculty here at the college, is providing a weekly journal assignment for students that is open, that has maybe some specific question prompts, but gives students the ability to self-reflect on the content each week, what they are understanding, what they're having trouble grasping, how it relates to their own lives. And through a weekly kind of journal, and giving them the option of how they want to express themselves through that journal, whether it be traditional kind of pen to paper or maybe video recording or audio podcast, that gives them a space that they can reflect. And then over the course of the semester, they have artifacts that they can go back to and see the learning journey happen. And that is so powerful because it helps keep them motivated and see them progress. And you can even build those journaling activities into an end of the semester project where they can then reflect on their total journey. And that is something that's been proven to be very powerful for our students in their learning. Timely feedback we've talked about, but again, not just providing feedback that says good job, but constructive. So identifying their strengths, identifying their improvement, so students can build upon their learning that way. Goal setting, time management, particularly for our online and hybrid HyFlex courses. Those are critical so that they can set those goals, know what's expected each week, and make and prioritize their time of when and how they're going to work through that. Models of perseverance, so sharing stories, whether it's personal to you as an instructor or other examples in the real world or past students of overcoming obstacles. I love this because I think it also relates to kind of how we can be transparent and upfront to a degree with our students, where we're not perfect, right? As instructors, we make mistakes, and so when students see that and see the models and examples of persevering through challenges, that gives them more comfort and knowing that they can make those mistakes and overcome those. And that is really key to learning for our students. Because oftentimes, whether they're new students or adult learners returning, feel of failures is a top sort of topic and item of kind of hesitancies within learning, right? If you don't hit that benchmark, if you don't score high enough on an exam, that, bleeds out into small assignments, even non-graded assignments where, not meeting that benchmark is really anxious for a lot of our students. But instead, those moments of not necessarily outright failure, but missing the mark is where growth happens, right? And so recognizing those opportunities of where you were lacking or didn't quite understand can come back as a student and then push through that. And those models really, I think, provide motivation for our students. Running through the rest of this list here, we've got self-regulation support, open communication, and task assignment chunking. So various strategies to keep students stay focused. Open communication relates again back to kind of being transparent, but allowing students to ask questions and express concerns, whether it's over the content, over the assignments, and fostering open dialogue that embraces learning sort of collectively. And then chunking, helping to chunk up large projects into smaller ones, whether it's based week by week or by module. That journal example I provided earlier is a great example of that. Or writing projects, in the humanities do this often, where students will submit draft papers that eventually end in a longer paper due at the end of the semester. So all these strategies, again, helping to self-regulate, for students to help self-regulate their own learning and their own strategies of learning. So as we now get ready to move into our activity, hopefully think maybe some of these strategies, whether the individual ones identified by the stars here or kind of the general categories, like back up here, recruiting interest, sustaining effort, and persistence, or self-regulation, maybe there's some that you're leaning more towards, maybe your own course, your own assessments are lacking or could use a little more in those categories. So thinking about those as we head into our workshop assignment here, I think will help aid the makeover process. So I'm going to take a little pause here and check in. So for Will specifically, is there a assignment in a course that you've developed or training program that you can think of that you would like to make over or apply some of these strategies? Or would you like to take a look at some of the example assignments I have in my
I
my
don't
library?
have it in front of me, but I'm working on a lesson plan right now. And the project is for the students to write either write a journal or a series of letters or a video blog, as though they were a historical character from the time period that we're going to be studying.
Awesome. That is amazing, because one of my the example I was gonna plan to walk you through before we break up and let you do your own thing is pretty close to that assignment. So that's awesome. And I kind of want to hear more about that, but let me show you sort of a quick example of what I'm hoping we can get out of our kind of brainstorming session. So here is our sort of totality of engagement strategies. And again, this isn't exhaustive, like there are plenty more. Some of these are engagement specific, as we identified. Others are action expression, representation, but overall kind of UDL principles in general and some key strategies. So I'm going to probably give you about, how much time we got? We still have 20 minutes. So like 5, maybe 10 minutes max to kind of brainstorm and think of ways to make over your assignment. And when you do, and when you come back to kind of share, I'm going to ask that you identify what strategies of these or other strategies you're aware of that were applied that helped make over that assignment, if you will. And I'm going to show you kind of a demonstration of this here now. So this is going to sound familiar because the assignment you just identified is going to appear here as well. So this is an example of a kind of assignment. weekly discussion on historical events. So the instructions for this specific assignments read the assigned chapter on the French Revolution, post a 200-word response discussing the causes of the French Revolution, comment on at least 2 classmates' post with a minimum of 50 words each. So if you've been teaching even for 1 semester, if not for decades, this is going to look and sound familiar, right? Not necessarily the French Revolution, but the whole, read something or absorb content for a week, post a response, or whether it's in this case the causes of French Revolution or another prompt, and then reply to 2 of your classmates. Now, at the surface, there's nothing wrong with the post and then reply to 2 peers, but without certain elements, without certain strategies, it's not super engaging, right? And if you've been a student at all in online hybrid for a semester or 2, this is a very common one that is used, and students know how to get around or do the bare minimum. But what we want to be thinking about, particularly with UDL principles in mind, is how do we engage students to relate to their own lives, to get them engaged and foster discussion where we can build on their learning. And so I'm going to show you an example of this assignment sort of made over with UDL principles in mind, and then I'll identify a couple of those strategies before I let you do it to your own. So here is the new activity. Title now is Role Play Discussion on the French Revolution. Instructions now you can see are a little bit more lengthy. They are as follows. Choose a historical figure from the French Revolution, research that figure's perspective and role during the revolution, and then choose one of the following options. Either post a 200-word response in the voice of your chosen figure discussing the cause of the French Revolution. Excuse me while I take a drink of water. Or choose to record an audio or video podcast in the voice of your chosen figure discussing your role in the French Revolution. And then it's provided a couple kind of prompts, right? Perhaps a critical moment in the event. What are you feeling as your chosen figure? What are you reacting to? What choices have you made or plan to make? And then finally, participate in a role play discussion responding to a classmate's post as your historical figure. So based on a similar model of post response and reply, but as you can already see, a lot of new elements have been added. I'm curious, in looking at this, you'll notice at the top I've got some blanks, but what are there any engagement strategies that you can identify? And I'll go back to this list just to recall your memory. Excuse me. What strategies from here can you see that have been applied to this assignment?
Well, they have choice because they can choose how to complete the assignment. They can choose multimedia. There's collaboration, peer learning and support because they're going to respond back to each other. Clear expectations. Right. So there are a lot of these in there.
There are, yep. And like you can see the instructions, expanded and added more, but like this wasn't a full makeover. This wasn't a complete like 180 change it. Like the base of that assignment is still there, but now we've provided choice. We've provided these different strategies. Excuse me once again. So I think you hit almost all of these we've got, and this isn't exhaustive. There are other ones, but for space issues, I just chose the top like 6 or 7. But yep, we've got choice, right? Offering the choice in how they're going to respond, whether it's a 200-word response or audio video podcast, choice and who they choose. Autonomy, so not only providing that choice, but giving them a sense of ownership and responsibility because they were drawn to this figure or they're drawn to this tool to submit that assignment. Relevance and interest, so we're utilizing audio and video podcast as a kind of technology, new technology age that they may be familiar with or want to experiment with. Motivation, again, bringing in those modern technologies. Collaboration, of course, because we're not just, isolate, like independently having students reply, but we're giving them an opportunity to role play. and in not just the content, right, but making this challenge here as finding the voice of these characters. So learning about their history, but then putting yourself in their position to then figure out what their voice might be under the context of this event. So a lot of strategies applied there. I have a bunch of other examples here I won't run through, but there's one from humanities and social sciences, which is reflective essay, public speaking, nursing. So I have a bunch of different examples drawn on. If you're interested in any of these, I'm happy to share kind of the before and afters. So for our activity, we've got, about, I'd say 5-8 minutes. Will, you already have identified a assignment. So I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes to kind of brainstorm. I'm not looking for very super detailed instruction breakdown, but after 5 minutes, when you come back, just kind of share the title or the general subject of your assignment. And then if you could tell us what it was before, kind of very, generally what you're asking students to do and submit, and then share kind of the updated or the made over version of this assignment by identifying some of those strategies. So I'll give you just a couple minutes. If you are ready to share in 2-3 minutes, then feel free to speak up, but we'll give you as much as 5-8 minutes to kind of just outline some stuff, and then I'll be curious to hear kind of your before and after assignment. So sound good? Any questions before we jump in? I think you're still muted. Not sure if you're
Nope, sounds good.
Okay, so I will check back in with you with about 5 minutes if you're still moving, and then we'll go from there. So thanks.
All right, cool.
All right. Well, how are we doing? Need another minute or two?
No, I think I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Okay. So just to kind of recap what we're looking for. So if you don't mind sharing out your original assignment, either title, subject, or kind of what the course and the instructions were, and then talk through kind of your process, but ultimately what the new assignment was and what strategies you implemented or what were key to making this assignment more engaging.
So originally the assignment started off as just a written essay, kind of a biography of somebody who was alive during the American Revolution.
Okay.
So that was just kind of the base. It was like, I think I had it at like 500 words. It was like basically 2 pages. So what I've turned that into is they select a historical figure still from the American Revolution, but now they're going to write a series of journal entries of letters, about 250 words each, or they can do a 3-minute podcast or video journal. Same thing as if they were that individual, reflecting that person's thoughts, feelings, and reactions to the events we're going to go over in class that week. The goal is to develop empathy for the historical figure, understand their role in shaping history by considering how they might have experienced and interpreted major events.
Oh, wow. I like that. I like that you've already kind of identified the goals. So it's not just a matter of applying some of these strategies, which are critical and important, right? But like you've already identified sort of the goal of what these strategies are trying to reach, right? You mentioned empathy, right. And I think that's really great because I think not only applying those strategies, but then like being forthright and identifying those goals, whether it's in the assignments or discussion afterward with your students, that's that connection, right, for students. So it's like, oh, empathy for, and these options help us get there rather than the traditional, right, retain, like learn new content and then write an essay, right? That only takes them so far. That's great. Yeah, sounds like you've been thinking through this already. So what were some of the strategies you found that were most useful while remaking this?
Well, I just kind of put myself in my student shoes and thought, like, what would I want to have options to do? Is like, what choices would I want to be able to make as far as, I don't want to be assigned a historical figure I have no ties to. I may particularly like one, or I may hate writing journals, but I like doing videos, so maybe I'll choose that.
Yeah. Awesome. No, so a big strategy there I heard was choice. So if we go back briefly just to our whoops, going the wrong way, to our list, choice, right? Yeah, giving them the choice in how they're going to submit, but also choice in that figure. So very similar to the example I gave. Other strategies here from this list that maybe you didn't intentionally seek after, but like as you said, putting yourself in your student's shoes, that kind of reflecting back on that might also be prominent. Any other strategies come to mind?
Relevance, interest,
Yeah.
the inclusive environment. So if students have difficulty, writing, but they can speak or use another device to speak for them.
Yeah.
That's kind of being more inclusive for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I got pretty clear goals, the requirements for the assignment.
Great.
And
Yeah.
there's some flexibility built in there too, because they get to pick how they want to respond.
That's awesome. At what point I'm just curious, what point in the course does this assignment pop up? Is this early, midway, toward the end, and then for it's not necessarily point value, but where does it stack up against other assignments? Like, is this one that you build up to, or is this just like a weekly one-off? Like, if you could provide a little context to how this assignment fits in your overall course.
So I'm debating using this as either around the midterm or around the final.
Okay.
I haven't really decided that yet, and that's also going to determine how many steps there are. So rather than maybe one journal entry, if it's going to be for the final, there might be 3 or 4 journal entries they have to do as we go over that course,
Gotcha.
that subject, that part of the course.
Yeah. Yeah. The way you've been describing this, I think, this is a great assignment that is, chunkable, right? That is not just
Right.
Here's the assignment, do this, you have X amount of days, but like they can build up through it. And so whether it's like a midterm assignment, and I love that like it's not just one journal entry, but multiple. So they get familiar with, kind of repeating that. So as they learn more about this historic figure or the contents of the American Revolution, they get to come back and do more journaling. So they could probably grow in their kind of development of that reflection piece, and then scaffold and provide chunking of like, okay, you got a choice in the tools or how you want to present this, and then they have options or ways to learn about those tools. And so I love that. And it seems to me you got a clear grasp of a lot of these strategies that are already gonna revolutionize, no pun intended, in the American Revolution, revolutionize this assignment for your students. So well done. Thank you for sharing. Any other comments there on your assignment, or maybe questions that you might have before we wrap up?
Just about giving feedback to the students as they progress through this. Yeah, obviously I wanted to be timely feedback, but
yeah, I would say authentic, like if you dive into some of the topics of authentic assessments, but also like regular substantial interaction. So being timely in our feedback, but how to be effective in that feedback. So going beyond,
right,
as we talked about, just good job, but like how to do that, and how to do that in a timely manner for you, right? Like if you have a large class of a lot of students, like it's almost improbable to be able to sit down one-on-one with every student and go over every element. But whether you're opening your doors for virtual or walk-in hours throughout the course. So I think that would lend itself great in this example where it's not a one and done assignment, but students build up to it. So they have opportunity, they have uptime to come see you if they have questions one-on-one. But in sort of each chunk or piece of this assignment, that's opportunity for more feedback. So they're learning and they can adjust if they're not meeting benchmarks or if they're missing some marks. And so I think already you've got elements in play that allow for timely feedback. So I would say well done there. And yeah, check up on regular substantial interaction, but best strategies and feedback as well. And I'd be happy to share that out after this workshop. So
thank you.
Yeah. So finally, final reflection. And as I run through this, I'm going to put our flow survey for today's workshop in the chat. So appreciate your feedback there. Those are anonymous. But as you kind of depart from this workshop, this activity, and then go back to your everyday life and then your course and teaching. Just some things to think about here about questions to prompt, right? How can you incorporate variety in your teaching approach and for your students' learning activities? How might you foster student interaction, collaboration? How can technology be used and effectively? What opportunities exist to integrate student choice? You identified student choice. I think that's so key, and especially on our online courses, is giving students choice in their learning. And then how do you encourage and support students to self-regulate and cope with the various elements in a course that they're going to encounter over the course of 7, 10, or 15 weeks. So these questions I've pulled together on this guide I've developed. I'll put a link to it that you can consult at any time. I don't know if I have a screenshot of it. I don't. There's just a thank you there. QR code for the survey. But I'll also put in the chat that guide. Oh, I do have the link here. So that guide, which has some other questions and prompts for your use, will be in the chat there. And then our CETA web page has some content on UDL in general with some best practice worksheets. I'll put that in the chat as well. So some additional learning you can go check out on your own time. So if there's not any other questions, happy to hang back, Will, but I'm going to end the recording here and say thank you for your time. And please reach out with any questions that you might have down the road.